and my place is in the home, and my home is a whole wide world. We are world shapers, we are change makers, we are potters spinning clay, we are dreamers of a new day. We are asking questions, we are opening up the door, we are searching, finding answers, we are wisdom seeking more. Rabbi, singer, teacher, professor, poet, preacher, driving buses, styling hair, we are everywhere. We are women, we are sweeping the heart, we are dreaming in the dark, we are weaving at the loom, we are the rhythms of the moon. We are world shapers, we are change makers, we are tenders of the earth, we are women giving birth. We are packing lunches, we are sewing the clothes you wear, we are sleeping on park benches, we are kneeling down in prayer. Doctor, dancer, scientist, carpenter and journalist, telling stories or rocking chairs, we are everywhere. We are women, we are stirring the pot, we are keeping the fire hot, we are holding a child's hand, we are the rhythms of the land. We are world shapers, we are change makers, we are potters spinning clay, we are dreamers of a new day. We are laughing, crying, we are taking the time to play, we are singing, we are sighing, we are making our own way. Politician, volunteer, refugee and engineer, in the streets and on the air, we are everywhere. We are world shapers, we are change makers, we are potters spinning clay, we are dreamers of a new day. We are rule breakers, we are home makers, we are healers of the earth, we are midwives at the birth. We are women, and our place is in the home, and our home is a whole wide world.
Okay. Welcome. Welcome everyone from good morning to some, good afternoon to us in Geneva and Europe, and then good evening to those further east. We are so happy to welcome you to what has become our annual CSW68 Consultation Day Geneva. Still virtual, maybe in the future we will do it in person, but we are very happy that you have joined us. Some of you will be going to New York. Many of us will be going to New York. And this is meant to be sort of an orientation, preparation to get into the mood and the thought processes of what we will be discussing in New York. and in fact, what many of us have been working on since almost after last year's CSW. Our Consultation Day Geneva is something that came out of, because of COVID and being able to speak to each other virtually and not to be able to go to New York. The idea to really create consultation days at the different UN venues and seats of the NGO CSWs came to be. And just to maybe begin with putting us in the place concerning the theme of poverty that we will be looking at, I just wanted to give a few statistics, a few sentences, just to remind us all that 1.2 billion people in 111 developing countries live in multidimensional poverty, which accounts for almost 20% of the world's population. 593 million children are experiencing multidimensional poverty. These statistics are, of course, unfathomable. I mean, the numbers are too great, but each one is actually reduced to a life that is present in that situation. And I think that is the link to civil society, that for all the incredible global goals and statistics that are compiled through our amazing UN bodies and entities, actually, I think that kind of personal aspect really comes from the work of civil society on the ground. Just last week, we were together with the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Dennis Francis. He came to Geneva for the Human Rights Council and invited NGO community to meet with him. And actually, pretty much our whole discussion was about the necessity of rethinking partnerships and finding compassionate, sort of personalized solutions together, and the importance of really doing this together, from listening to each other, analyzing together, making decisions together, and then ultimately, implementing the solutions together. And one of the watchwords actually that came up in this meeting was the importance of keeping lines of communications. And I think maybe among the civil society, we have been harping on this a lot recently, because we really want to work together with the governments and institutions, and we believe we have a lot to contribute. The NGO Committee on the Status of Women is a committee of organizations. We have 30 international NGOs that when we tried to calculate the numbers that we reach, we realize surely several 100,000 people are reached through all of our programs and all of our advocacy work. So it is not an inconsequential partnership to work together with civil society. My own NGO, the Women's Federation for World Peace, began 33 years ago with our members going out to 100 nations, over 100 nations, to work with local women specifically to help them to solve problems together. And actually, poverty was probably the highest focus on the list, and is a cross-cutting issue for, I think, all of our 30 international NGOs. For today's meeting, our theme of today that we took from within the theme, CSW68 theme, is nourishing equality and peace, addressing poverty and food insecurity. Perhaps before I introduce our first speakers, I just to say that having worked in Geneva with, most importantly with Human Rights Council, but with other of the bodies here, it would be really a shame if we cannot use the incredible platform of the United Nations to be able to find sustainable solutions. And the statistics that we're hearing recently about the backtracking of really, poverty, more ingrained, more higher, more suffering, comes down to more suffering in the world, less human dignity, and it's just really not acceptable. And I think we all feel that, and we are all happy, grateful to be able to work under this theme this year. And we go to New York, and in fact continue our work here in Geneva and in our chapters around the world, really with great seriousness, with hopes of really being able to make changes and bring solutions to this most serious breakdown of human dignity, which is poverty and human security, poverty. This year's theme: eradicating poverty, strengthening institutions and partnerships, identifying the gaps in financing, but within the realm of promoting the resource that women, and in particular also civil society, can provide. So let us hear from two of the institutions who have perhaps broadest perspective on this year's issues. One from the World Food Program, of course, famous for the incredible work, lives saved daily, that is being done, with headquarters in our region. And that's a very practical kind of way of solving poverty, of course. And then the second is from our Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, also working in the area of promotion of development and protection of human rights and, degradation of the right to dignified livelihoods. So let me begin by introducing Ms. Kavita Brambat. She is the Senior Advisor in Gender Protection and Inclusion from the World Food Program. Mrs. Kavita is involved in international community development work through ethical leadership and unity empowerment. She aims to share resources and promote learning on a global level. Her projects in Jamaica, India, and Africa focus on utilizing best practices that can be implemented by communities locally, nationally, and globally. Ms. Brambat, you have the floor, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for the introduction. I will humbly tell you that I think that was a biography for someone else. I would love to have programs in Jamaica, but sadly I'm based in the headquarters in Rome, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of our team in Rome and on behalf of WFP. So I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in these days. And on Zoom, we could be anywhere at every time. Thank you, everyone, for, and especially you, Caroline, for having WFP here today at this really important event on nurturing equality and peace, addressing poverty and food insecurity as part of the CSW68 Global Consultation Day. So my name is Kavita Brambat. I'm the senior... I've got a pop-up saying I'm speaking Spanish. That's interesting. Sorry, my name is Kavita Brambat. I'm the Senior Advisor to the Gender Protection and Inclusion Service at WFP. And for those who need a visual description, I'm a mixed-race Asian woman with long brown hair and wearing a very jazzy paisley top, and I'm generally smiling all the time. So today I'm here on behalf of WFP to talk to you about how we all, when we work together, can ensure that the way poverty is addressed benefits women and girls. As the call for action states, and it was a great call for action and something that really resonates with us at WFP, we make up part of a system looking in to find common solutions and innovative solutions by working together for joint actions that bring us closer to the realization of the goals that you were talking about, Caroline, and ending poverty and ensuring food security for all. So whilst I know with every conviction and every bone in my body that we're standing here together, or even sitting here together in agreement with this, when we raise our heads and look around us at the realities of our work, it's really clear that we have a long way to go, and the picture in front of us, especially in the work that we do at WFP, is quite dire. You talked about investments and the lack of investments. You talked about the impacts of conflict and climate change. All these come together to create a picture that's quite difficult for us to apprehend, but also to find solutions to. So it's just a great pleasure to be with people who are looking for the same solutions. So I think, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So conflict across the world, as I think someone...
Martin, could you? Yeah. Thank you.
So conflict across the world, and WFP works a lot in humanitarian environments as well as development ones, but conflict across the world and the impacts of climate change not only hamper women's access to basic services, but it also puts the brakes on progress that's been made on the past on women's rights and justice. In a report published by WFP on gender and access, it focused on barriers faced by women and girls in accessing WFP's services. A clear picture emerges of what we're up against. Prior to receiving food or cash, information is often provided on entitlements, but this information sometimes doesn't reach women and girls because differing levels of illiteracy or literacy, lower levels of literacy, prevent them from actually consuming or understanding the information that's been provided to them. There's other issues like the denial of legal and identity documents to women to be able to even reach a place where distributing food or cash or use the cash is preventing people from having equal rights to what we're distributing in the first place. And even there's some background noise. Thanks. And insecurity and violence, particularly gender-based violence, represents a real and urgent risk to women within the cycle of food and cash distribution. And sometimes even when the food arrives at home, it's unequally distributed once it's there, depriving women and girls of what they both need to both survive and to thrive. And if this does not paint a bleak enough picture, we know that when we look at the intersecting identity of the women that we're talking about, such as disability, age, indigeneity, the levels of exclusion rocket. There's no way, given this context, that zero hunger is possible without addressing these barriers, because a zero hunger world is the one where everyone has equal opportunities, equal access to resources, and an equal voice in the decisions that shape their lives. It's not tolerable today that women and girls are those who are left the most hungry, whilst also fighting to protect their safety and their rights. We used to say it would take 100 years to see gender equality. We're now looking at more like 300 years. And whilst we all know that progress towards gender equality and food security has been hard hit in the last few years, never have we been more motivated or committed to be doing what it takes to reduce this gap. I noted in the call to action the focus on gender parity for women in leadership and management positions. And at WFP, we've made remarkable strides in promoting gender equality and diversity. Over the last few years, representation of women in WFP has increased, and today, indicating a real commitment to diversity, we've also increased in the appointment of a diverse subsection of women in leadership positions, highlighting the essential role women play in our strategy for achieving gender parity. I also noted in the focus, in the call for action, the focus on trusted relationships and strategic collaboration with civil society, and linking in with our commitments on local action for local solutions. We have a gender policy, a protection and accountability to affected people's policy, as well as a strategic plan that all focus on the power of partnership to sustain and bring about change. And this is something that we really are committed to developing in the future years. In terms of our programs, whether these are humanitarian or development, or both in some countries, and indeed, of course, the ones that contribute to peace, inclusion is really the bedrock of how we work, no matter what the context is. We invest in women through providing them cash so that they can invest in themselves, for example. Over 1/3 of WFP support is in cash-based transfers, and we leverage that to have a transformational impact when we're prioritizing giving money to women, giving them greater control over household resources and decision-making, again, enhancing their ability to meet their family's food and nutrition needs and allowing them to invest in their own future in the way they see fit. Addressing the complex challenges of food security requires collaborative efforts, and this is what you've been very clear with in the call to action. Collaborative efforts from governments, civil society organizations, the private sector, the international development and humanitarian organizations. So by prioritizing investments in women and fostering partnerships for women's empowerment, we can make significant strides towards achieving global food security goals. And this is exactly what we intend to do when we're in New York for the CSW. So colleagues, just to end this little intervention, we do feel at WFP we have a moral responsibility to collectively invest in the half of the global population that is the furthest behind. We have recognized the crucial role of women in food security and nutrition, and we have previously committed to support their empowerment. But this is the time now to ramp up action, and before it is too late, start doing what we say that we're going to do. Let's continue our efforts, double down on prioritizing and investing in women, and shorten that 300 years figure as fast as possible. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm going to hand over to the next speaker and follow these fascinating conversations. I'll be online for the whole event, and happy to take some questions and answers afterwards. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kavita. Many points that you made that are really important for us to hear. I think even to hear you say zero hunger, I mean, this is, I feel you believe that is possible. I think we all like to believe that, and we can see that in local, in our local actions, we can see really solving hunger issues on that small scale, but you have the global perspective and you still believe that. I believe if we are really working together and closing these gaps in our partnerships, that many of these problems can be solved more easily than we think. I did also, so thank you again so much for coming. I'm sorry about the bio that was not exactly correct. I'm sorry for that. It will be posted on our website though. And I do want to just say thank you to Mr. Giancarlo Siri, who is the Geneva World Food Program Director, who we have worked with, who has attended our ambassador breakfast briefing and also keeping us informed actually about the work of the World Food Program and including us as well. So thank you again, Kavita, and maybe we will see you in New York. Our second speaker today is Ms. Isabelle Durant. She is from Belgium originally. She has worked in government. She has also been an MEP. She has also worked in UNCTAD, I think, acting Deputy
Secretary General, yes.
Deputy Secretary General, and also in various functions at the United Nations and UNDP. But we know her most because of her current role, which is she is the chair of the expert mechanism on the right to development of the Officer of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I enjoy so much listening to you and your perspective on this issue about working with a right to development to really solve some of these problems. So you have the floor, Ms. Isabelle Durant. Thank you for taking time for us.
With pleasure. So first of all, hello everybody. So thanks for the invitation and congratulations for this initiative regarding consultation on the CSW. First of all, of course, I fully agree with what Kavita said about the importance of food and the role of the WFP regarding food security for all women. There is no doubt that the right to development is one of the tools that can help to eradicate poverty, and in particular the poverty of women who pay a never higher price for these situations. But what is all it about? Let me briefly remind what right to development means. So since 1986, right to development is declared as a right of people, individual and collective, to actively participate, contribute to, and enjoy to development. A declaration, what means that it is so far not binding. The fight to make right to development a binding treaty is not illegitimate, of course, and a negotiation will start in New York. But all of us, we know that even a binding text can be considered as a full guarantee. And it is only a tool among others, and even several international law can be challenged or sometimes violated. So we see it every day. As I just mentioned, participate and contribute to development, that's exactly what women are doing everywhere and every time. But enjoy development much less and almost never at all. So right to development implies a large spectrum of responsibilities and duties which have to address this persistent gender injustice and inequality. And in the meantime, a gender-based development has to become a practice. So I would like to focus on 3 issues that we could prioritize or consider as a priority, from the most comprehensive to the most local one. So first one, of course, financing for development. And we know the problems that developing countries are facing regarding financing their development, education, health, ecological transition, which affect them the most, particularly in this post-COVID period. So in UNCTAD, that I am the previous DSG, we worked a lot on what is today nearly unanimously considered as a condition for development, and I mean the reform of international financial institutions. This requires a huge reform of decision-making process in this financial institution to allow restructuring of debt, de-risking investment, reallocation of special drawing rights within the IMF, go beyond GDP and take into consideration specific vulnerabilities, adaptation of the rules in the regional development banks, and so forth. But even if this reform is mentioned now in more or less each speech, there is a long way to go and a lot of political resistances, like in any model change. Nevertheless, we can count on a few strong and engaged women on these issues, like, for instance, Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and her Bridgetown initiative, or other feminist economists who are leaders in this field. But we all know that better financing for development is not synonymous of a gender-based development. And which brings me to my next proposal or priority. More women in decision-making process at various levels and better access to grant, to finance for women entrepreneurs and projects driven by women. In addition, we need more, and more is not appropriated because in these processes, there is often no one woman around the table. We need more women in the political and peace processes. Women are the first victim in conflicts, as it is the case today in Sudan, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in DRC, and they are never involved in the negotiating process during and at the end of the conflict, or to monitor the implementation of a peace agreement. On the front line of today's multiple crises and converging crises, women human rights defenders courageously and tirelessly make an essential contribution to local, regional, and global initiatives in favor of peace and security. They do so loudly and softly, on the streets and in their homes, fighting against the weight of centuries of discrimination, disrespect, and violence. My third priority is related to all women in rural areas of developing countries. And I propose to support actively a very concrete proposal which can deeply change women's lives and women's engagement. You know that more than 1 in 3 of the world's population use unsafe fuels for their stuffs. Those 2.5 billion people are either burning kerosene or biomass, a collective term for fuels like wood, charcoal, and animal drug. They are both inefficiency and harmful, especially when used indoors with poor ventilation. This is a key contributor to climate change and sea level rise. Trees tend to be cut down at a much faster rate than their regrowth, leaving forests destroyed, while trees and other plants are vital for absorbing CO2. So inhaling the resulting smoke and fumes cause huge health problems, and it's estimated to 3.2 million people. And of course, a vast majority of women and their children or their back, they die prematurely even every year because of household air pollution. So we know that gender norms, that we have to change, of course, but it takes time. But gender norms and expectations around domestic responsibilities mean that cooking falls mainly to women and girls. Unfortunately, this means they have less time available to study, carry out paid work, or engage in their community or in political process. So I conclude to say that today we see, especially in developing countries, that the Me Too movement, let's move the lines on dignity and respect for women. And the threshold of tolerance slowly decrease. That's nice. But now we have to support and activate a Me Too economic and politic in order to address poverty issue for women, but also, of course, gender equality. So that's what I wanted to share with you as proposals or priorities which could be shared with all of you, and that we can try to translate in active lobbying in the CSW in New York in the following weeks. So thank you for your attention, and of course I stay with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Isabel Durant. Thank you for taking time for us. And also thank you, succinctly, your three priorities, reform of financial institutions, women's leadership. But even as we discovered, as we were preparing our call to action, that issues like peace, these issues, although maybe not mentioned specifically in the CSW68 priority theme, you cannot leave that out, or you cannot forget about, the importance of a peaceful environment for for the solutions. And then coming back to, of course, local women and this very specific threat of unsafe fuels. And we will include, in your case, your points that you mentioned, as well as from our previous speaker. We will add to our call to action based upon some of the input that we have here now in this meeting. So thank you again, and we look forward to meeting you again in the context of the expert mechanism on the right to development. Thank you for your work. So now I would like to move to the next section of our afternoon together, and that is our interactive panel. And our panelist moderator today, our panel moderator today is Miss Letitia Van Haren. As you have seen, the bios are also being put in the chat if you want to learn more. She is representing in our NGO Committee on the Status of Women Geneva. She represents Mother's Legacy Project and the Alliance for Health Promotion. She is cultural anthropologist. And actually, even though we're good friends, actually, I learned many things when I really looked up specifically to see actually what she has been doing in her life. And I was amazed to see how many different institutions she has worked with. She was also executive director of Defense for Children International, has worked with, in almost 20 different countries, with Doctors Without Borders, UNDP, UNICEF, UNHCR. So we too, among ourselves, civil society, we also have to listen to each other, in fact. So Letitia, you have the floor.
Oh, well, thank you, Carolyn, and welcome to all of you. I find it really an honor, and I feel even more challenged to do a good job, and I hope you will help me to do it after these very powerful speakers introduce us so wonderfully to the issues that we have at hand right now. Because, well, we've already presented the main theme. And here for the panel, it is nourishing equality or nurturing equality. We've been discussing about it. And peace, addressing poverty and food insecurity. And we have very good starting points from our two keynote speakers. And we now proceed with a panel which will have, I would say, 4 panel members, 3 invited speakers, and a collective of our six of our members who will each make a statement that shows what the individual civil society organizations can do to promote the removal of gender bias in overcoming poverty and food insecurity, and therefore also promoting peace and promoting equality and access to development. I was very, very pleased that the right to development and the gender bias in the right to development was stressed specifically. It really is helpful for this consultation day. So with the 3 invited members, we start with welcoming Her Excellency Ambassador Francisca Elizabeth Mendes Escobar. I would like to welcome you. She has a background in political science, in public administration and law. So when I saw that, I thought, she very early knew on what she wanted in life, that she chose these topics. Yeah, which is not so common for Mexico. She is now recently appointed the ambassador here with the United Nations, but she's been in the diplomatic service since 1991 already, and she has served in different countries, different international diplomatic missions, and she also has had positions in political affairs at the level of her country, but also regional and international and global affairs, and was the deputy head of mission in a number of countries. So, Your Excellency, you have the floor. Each panel speaker has 7 to 8 minutes. And you're free to tackle the subject the way you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Thank you so much, the previous speaker, Kavita and Isabel, and of course, Caroline. Actually, I have to say you, Leticia, that I start my career a little bit late, considering the random age in the Mexican Foreign Services. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, fellow panelists, and participants who are joining us virtually. Let me start by warmly thank you to the NGO's Committee on the Status of Women, Geneva, and the co-organizers of this event for inviting me. Congratulations on organizing this relevant and timely discussion. I was asked to talk about how policies to reduce poverty and promote food security can drive equality, including gender equality and peace, and how we ensure women's and girls' fair access and benefit sharing based on Mexico experience. At the outset, let me say that Mexico recognizes the importance of gender equality and the human rights of women, adolescents, and girls to achieve prosperous, peaceful, and sustainable societies. However, we also recognize that we face challenges both in the country and in the world to achieve this goal by 2030, since the multiple current crises undoubtedly have differentiated effects on women and girls. The feminization rates of poverty are higher. There is a greater female representation in the lower strata of wage. The social protection deficit is greater among women, and they face more obstacles to accessing housing, land, credit, and other assets. That is why, within the framework of Mexico's feminist foreign policy, we recognize the importance of forums such as the UN Commission of the Status of Women, which allow debating the human rights of women youth, and girls in all their diversity, together with multiple actors, including civil society organizations and international agencies. Let me now return to the central topic of today's consultation. In Mexico, we are convinced that fighting poverty and food insecurity is essential to promote peace and equality. In this sense, the guiding principle of the current administration has been for the good of all, first the poor, prioritizing the fight against poverty and marginalization in which the most vulnerable sectors lie. With this objective, in recent years, a series of measures have been adopted which have yielded positive results. I highlight some. First, we have a methodology to measure multidimensional poverty that is based not only on per capita income, but also on access to and enjoyment of services. Having data is the first step to be able to fight poverty. Second, the minimum wage has been significantly increased, thereby benefit 6.4 million formal workers and reducing the gender wage gap by 20% at the municipal level between 2019 and 2022. Third, a pension scheme has been established for all older adults and persons with permanent disabilities. In addition, the Constitution was amended so that access to scholarship, financial support, and non-contributory pension becomes human rights that the Mexican state must guarantee. Fourth, in the area of food security, various programs and measures have been established to guarantee the right to food and eradicate hunger in rural areas, for example, benefiting 1 million small or medium grain producers with direct economic support, or keeping the essential food products 15% below market cost to benefit the person in most vulnerable and marginalized situation. Thanks to this type of measure, in recent years, the population in multidimensional poverty was reduced 5% between 2018 and 2022, that it's 5 million people left that condition. The situation of women improved with a reduction in a multidimensional poverty of 5%. The gap in income between the poorest and richest household was reduced from 20 to 14 times in the period 2018-2022. Poverty indicators are at historical lows. More than 5 million people can now access nutrition food. However, anti-poverty and food security policies alone do not necessarily generate greater gender equality. It is required that these policies have a gender perspective, that they take into account the multiple and intersectional forms of discrimination, and that they be accompanied by transformative measures. As the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls has said in one of its latest reports, the right to be free from poverty cannot be realized in isolation from individual and collective rights to substantive equality. In addition to the measures to combat poverty referred to above, in Mexico, we have also adopted measures to promote gender equality. In 2020, the Chamber of Deputies of the Federal Congress approved constitutional reforms to elevate care matters to constitutional status to particular benefit people in poverty. The lack of recognition of household and care work mainly in charge of women and girls, in many cases makes their working condition precarious, their access to an adequate educational level and professional development, impact their level of autonomy and access to education, jobs, health services, social security, political participation, and a life free from violence. We have also adopted a gender and climate change action plan to train and empower women. We have promoted the certification of labor equality and non-discrimination in work centers to improve conditions for women to access better jobs, higher incomes, and better working conditions. We have considerably increased the budget of institutions focused on women's rights, such as in Mujeres. Mexico has a firm commitment to make progress in reducing poverty and inequality, hand in hand with measures that improve women's access to employment, education, and participation in all areas. This is the way forward, as evidence shows that gender equality strengthens the stability of societies, and that guarantee the rights of women and girls is a powerful tool for building security and peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Edgar. It was really wonderful and very interesting, and the progress that you could even show us and explain to us in figures, that's in statistics, that's really important. That gives us an idea of the tangible results. It is closing the gap between the rich and the poor, closing the gap between women and men, and you highlighted the very sore difficulties that in all societies, even in the most advanced, we still struggle with for women and girls. That many of the, as you so poignantly said, the work the women participate, the women participate a lot in development, but they don't reap the benefits. We see that also in your presentation. So I'm really very pleased to hear what the Mexican government is doing to close this gap and move forward. Thank you very much for this presentation. We now go to, we now go to Dr. Uni Karunakara. Yes. Good afternoon, Dr. Karunakara. Sorry. So if I may present Dr. Uni Karunakara, he is a medical doctor, and he has been working really in humanitarian sector from the ground level to the highest level. And he is now, this long career in the humanitarian sector has given him a lot of possibility and power to speak also at the global level, because it's not disconnected from the ground, it is grounded in what's happening there. And that is so important. So at the moment, for the Dr. Karunakara is a senior fellow with the Global Health Justice Partnership at the Law School of Yale University. And he is speaking to us in that capacity, though many of us remember him because we are here in Geneva with UNHCR, with all the humanitarian issues, as the longtime president of the international president of Médecins Sans Frontières. But we know that we now listen and hear you from what you're doing right now. But I'm sure that your past experiences play a role and shape what you are contributing to the international discussion right now. You have the floor, Dr. Karunakara.
Thank you, Letitia, for that introduction, and thank you for the committee for inviting me to speak. As Letitia pointed out, I'm a humanitarian worker for more than 2 decades, and my thoughts and comments come from that perspective of what I see as a humanitarian worker and also as a health worker, public health worker. So, and I'm sort of outsider in many ways to working on poverty and security, because as you know, humanitarian workers largely work on alleviating suffering, while development is necessarily alleviating the root causes of suffering, working on poverty, etc. So in that sense, there's a very big difference between the scope of work that humanitarians are engaged in and development workers are engaged in. Now, in various ways, I just want to set the stage a little bit. In various ways, and that's so visible in places where we work, poverty, pestilence, conflict, and climate change are overwhelming or disrupting food systems, resulting in massive food insecurity. Now, FAO projects that almost 600 million people will be chronically undernourished in 2030. Staggering number. That's a huge number, right? And we live in times where we are hitting several boundaries or limits. We are dangerously close to reaching planetary limits that will destabilize human societies in ways we don't even fully comprehend at the moment. Our economic systems have raised the cost of living and increased inequality. Our political systems are securitized and increasingly backsliding on democracy and freedoms. And our governance systems have been unable or perhaps unwilling, lacking the political will to respond effectively to collective threats we face. Now, we also live in a post-liberal world where geopolitical rivalries gathering pace and economic growth, global economic growth is slowing. COVID-19 and the wars that are going on now illustrate in no uncertain terms that globalization and the international order have not resulted in mutual protections or equitable distribution of global goods. A Munich Security Conference stated just last week, I think, that from the perspective of many developing states, the international order has never delivered on its promise to grow the pie for the benefit of the all. Right? So that sort of tells you, in many ways, the failure of the global system to sort of be equitable and just in how they partition benefit across the board. Now, I'll zoom in on 3 points, which I feel are critical in pushing for equity and justice when in the face of food insecurity. And this, again, comes from my perspective as being a humanitarian and health worker. So one is food sovereignty, or food system sovereignty. Second is nutrition security. And third is labor justice. Some of these points have been mentioned by earlier speakers, the ambassador who spoke just before me and Kavita Brahmbhatt very early on. But I'll still sort of go ahead and underline some of those points. Now, what COVID-19 has exposed in many ways is the empty rhetoric of global solidarity. So even when faced with the worst health crisis in a century, many governments prioritized self-interest and short-term payoffs against global cooperation.
So what did Ma say?
Why doesn't she think?
Yeah. She's a
Can you turn on mute, please?
Yes, please.
So the speaker can carry on. There are two people speaking.
Shall I continue?
Please. Sorry, very sorry for that.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just go back to the point that I was making on food sovereignty and what COVID-19 has perhaps illustrated. Global solidarity failed in our response to COVID-19. So when we were faced with one of the worst crises in a century, many governments prioritized self-interest and short-term payoffs against global cooperation and collective benefits. Vaccine nationalism and the failure to secure a TRIPS waiver are illustrative of this failure. So the global south is increasingly concerned that they're gaining less than others in a globalized world. Sovereignty over systems and supply chains have become an important concern, especially pushing back against global corporate interests over national needs. So we are seeing in many ways a pushback or a slight retreat from the globalization that defined the liberal age that since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Now, to withstand external shocks such as the Ukraine conflict, national and local food systems need to be resilient. Currently, urbanization and large-scale corporate farming exclude small farmers from food systems. So building capacities of local farmers and supply chains, much like what is happening in health, will bring in local food options, including otherwise neglected nutritious species, local foods, etc., leading to food security. So higher local capacities will also be able to better feed the most vulnerable in terms of crisis. And so I think even in food, like in health, I think we really need to look at local capacities and strengthen as much as possible and not always rely on global systems to meet the needs locally. Second is nutrition security. And this is, we all know that is important, but very often we talk about food security and not really stress the importance of nutrition security. Now, FAO again has reported that 3.1 billion people in the world, or about 42%, are unable to afford a healthy diet in 2021. That's again staggering, right? And this is happening in the context of cheaper availability of processed food, high in fats, sugar, and salt, and diminishing availability of nutritious vegetables and fruit. It is telling that almost 350 most powerful food and agriculture companies, among them, very few recognize the importance of local food systems or actively work towards improving health and nutrition. Right? So that's also something that we need to take in account when faced with the mass availability of processed foods. How are we all going to address nutrition security? A third of the world's population is malnourished and in places at once suffering from double burden of obesity and stunting. So urgent and national and local action is needed to prevent food insecurity, micronutrient deficiencies, and diet-related diseases. And women are at the center of this, our ability to respond to nutrition security. We already know that an empowered woman can provide more diversified diet for the family, leading to better nutritional outcomes. Now, let me come to labor justice, which is very important, which the ambassador sort of alluded to. Now, COVID-19 once again highlighted the precarity of auxiliary health workers. So we know that in communities, women are disproportionately expected to, or even pushed to take on roles in communities that emphasize their maternal nature or volunteer spirit. So community health workers, for example, mostly women, are undercompensated and often on informal employment contracts. Every time we talk about health priorities, it falls on the shoulder of a woman in a village who is underpaid, under-recognized, and they basically determine the success of any health program that we might sort of sit and talk about in Geneva and in New York, right? Yet these women are hardly recognized. They don't have proper jobs, etc. Right? And this is very clear during the pandemic. The workload of Indian sanitation workers, for instance, increased with no proper compensation or recognition. For the additional tasks they had to take on, not just at work, but also at home, because schools were closed, kids were home. So they had this burden increase but at the same time unrecognized. Often, they were also the last to receive vaccinations or essential PPEs, protective materials. So, and unionization is also low for informal sector workers. All of these leading to, and every time there was a demand for more protection, pay, these were met with threats of termination. So the manner of care extractivism therefore expands inequality and precarity with sort of significant impact on food and nutrition security. Now, in agriculture, women make half of all agriculture labor in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. And their work is absolutely critical in securing food and nutrition at the household level. Women, however, have limited access to advice and technology that could help improve agricultural productivity. So unlike in the health sector, community level agriculture workers are mostly male. So addressing gender imbalance is therefore crucial in increasing female participation and income, directly leading to food and nutrition security with many additional health benefits. So last point on conflict, and then I'll hand over to the next speakers. Now, violent conflicts have an undeniable impact on food security, and Kavita pointed that out very early on. Land is confiscated, food production is halted, and the distribution of food is instrumentalized very often for political purposes. The late Sadako Ogata, who was head of UNHCR in the 90s, once said that there are no humanitarian solutions for humanitarian problems. The solutions for a lot of the problems that we talk about are inherently political. Finding local solutions and building capacities require political will. It requires global political will. Peace happens when the bomb stops falling. Peace happens when the land is safe. Peace happens when women have agency and control over what is grown. Peace happens when children and the most vulnerable have access to diverse, nutritious diets. Thank you. I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Karunakara. That was really very interesting. And as I've myself been in humanitarian emergency aid, and maybe we have even crossed paths, I do not know, but it's possible, with UNHCR, I am really, it was so useful to remind all of us that humanitarian aid is not the same as development aid. But at the same time, some countries are, we found them in such a dire state of government that the examples or the solutions that we found in humanitarian conditions and situations, I particularly think of Médecins Sans Frontières, were in fact more effective even for the population as a whole than the longer term, impossible to implement peace-based solutions. So in that sense, the humanitarian scene has definitely helped to get going in places where we could not expect safe and further looking governments in place. Thank you so much. We will now turn to Mrs. Vilota Jetzer. Vilota Jetzer, yes?
Yes.
Good to see you. So Mrs. Vilota Jetzer is a Swiss national. She's residing in Ecuador, but she is also working as a consultant advising on the Food for Life campaign of the World Council of Churches. She is a nutrition and food security and nutrition expert. So I guess that you have a lot to discuss afterwards with Professor Uni Karunakara. And we are very happy to listen to you. You have also been working and implementing public health programs. And what I like very much, you have a practical side to it, which is to develop sustainable products with innovative ingredients. And I suppose that these ingredients are also locally available or can be produced locally, so that we again sort of have a smooth connection with what Dr. Karunakara said just before about the importance of the local food to make sure that we have healthy food and that we are not totally dependent on these international upheavals. But the floor is to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for the introduction. I will just share my screen as I would like to just show a few images through the discussion. So today I want to talk about two topics. Firstly, about how women are a force towards more sustainable agricultural practices within Europe. And secondly, discuss one political instrument, one policy instrument called geographical indications, also sometimes referred to as denominations of national origin, as a policy instrument to further sustainable rural development. We have recently all heard the cries of farmers across the European Union who are talking strongly about their worsening economic situation. Their work is often undervalued, be it on a monetary perspective, but also in the eyes of the general public. They are no longer able to sustain themselves through their profession and rely heavily on governmental subsidies for their livelihoods. This situation makes for an overall very unattractive sector to work in for the next generation. In fact, the Ministry of Agriculture in France has stated that the number of farmers has been divided by 4 in the past 40 years. And they expect another third farmers to go into retirement in the next 10 years. So this poses a whole another issue for the food sovereignty and food autonomy of France and of other European Union countries. So in this situation, what about women in agriculture? They have long been overlooked, underpaid, not taken seriously, as well as relegated to administrative tasks. In France particularly, women have fought hard to obtain the same, to be recognized firstly, and to obtain the same economic and social privileges as their men counterparts. Today, the European Union states that around 30% of farms are run by women. This obviously changes according to the country. In France, it's about 25%, whereas in the Netherlands, it's only 1%. What is interesting is that we see that among the new generation of farmers, there is an increasing amount of women that are taking up the profession. And they have a very interesting profile. So first of all, they're slightly older when they commence the profession. They often have had a different type of profession beforehand. They are very committed to implement sustainable practices, and they voice strong political opinions against the status quo. In France, they have actually been the center of a lot of talks during the Forum of Agriculture that has been taking place this week. And there's actually a very interesting documentary that's been put forward called Women of the Earth that was shown on national television. So we are seeing a generation of women that are taking things into their own hands, creating trainings and workshops and spaces for women in this profession to talk about their difficulties, as well as learn how to maybe drive a tractor or handle difficult equipment that was often seen as men's work. However, women are still overall very much underrepresented in official spaces, be it in syndicates, work organizations, professional syndicates, etc., and also government. So I think here there is a space for, be it EU policies or national policies, to really encourage and facilitate women who want to enter into this profession, as they speak a lot more positively of their experience than what we could hear maybe in the media. There are very many EU policies and solutions put in place that further sustainable rural development. When we talk about sustainability, we have to think about 3 pillars, always environmental, economic, and social. And when we talk about food, obviously, we also have to take into account the nutrition aspect. Any policy or instrument needs to address all dimensions in order to bring forward positive change. I specifically want to talk about one policy instrument, which are called geographical indications, or as we say in France, appellation d'origine contrôlée. This instrument helps to value agricultural products by promoting traditional processing methods, quality products, and the know-how of farmers. Increasingly, they are also integrating an environmental perspective to look at the the impact of their production and maybe rethinking certain traditional practices that could be improved. Created in France in the 20th century, the early 20th century, they are widely used for cheese and wine products. They are a strong tool for rural development, bringing not only value to the economic value to the product in itself, but also to the region as a total. We can think, for example, of agrotourism in the French Alps or also in the wine regions. Geographical indications have not only been used in Europe, they have traveled the Atlantic and are also widely used in Latin America on products such as cocoa and coffee. So let me tell you a story about one product in particular. Let's cross the Atlantic and go to Ecuador, a small country on the west coast of Latin America. I want to talk to you about misque, which has indigenous women at its center. So misque is an alcoholic beverage that is made from the fermentation of the sap of the agave plant. The sap itself is called shower misque. The women, called misqueros, have the know-how on how to extract this particular sap from the plant. And they have been central in guarding this particular process for centuries, as shower misque has been used by the indigenous population for millennials for its nutrition and also hydrating properties. And so women have been also central in bringing this product forward and making it more official. It has long been denigrated as only being an indigenous product, and now is starting to get more clout on the international scene. And so it's interesting to see how also the fact that this product is the only beverage in Ecuador that has received a geographical indication, and has also helped many women who are misqueros and collect and distill the sap, have been able to sustain their livelihoods thanks to the recognition of this product. So we wait to see if misque one day becomes as popular as tequila. So to conclude, the agricultural sector has faced many challenges, and women often pay the higher burden of these challenges. However, we see a lot of positive change that we do need to highlight, be it from the new generation of farmers that are coming in to implement better practices, but also from policy instruments that put sustainability as well as women's rights at their center. Thank you very much. I put my contact details on the slide and would gladly discuss any topics further.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Villot. That was very, very interesting. And I also liked, I think most of us who live in France got immediately to this appellation contrôlée idea when you talked about this misque. And of course, that would be a very interesting perspective for the women to really be lifted out of poverty as their drink, or could be internationally distributed. So I thank you very much. It was very, very useful to also learn how the new farmers in France have a political and I would almost say ideological underpinning when they decide to become so, that they want to change and not change, talk about it, but do it. That is 25% of the farmers are women. That's impressive. And I'm really looking at French farming now from in a different way after your presentation. We have now come to the part of the fourth panel members, which is the 6 members of our NGO CSW here in Geneva. And I think that the best is that each of the members presents herself with the organization that she is speaking for and that she is an active member of, so that we have an idea of what the richness is, the wealth and variety that the members bring to this international discussion. We start with Paula Deppen. So I invite Paula Deppen to present herself and present her statement. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. My name is Paula Dappen, and I represent the BioVision Foundation for Ecological Development. We're based in Zurich, Switzerland, but we have many projects in sub-Saharan Africa. We have a partner, a daughter organization based in Nairobi, and we work globally and internationally. I want to thank all the speakers for their valuable input, which speaks to the vision and the work of BioVision. Since its founding, BioVision has pursued the vision of a world with sufficient healthy food for all, produced by healthy people in a healthy environment. At the Rio Plus 20 conference in 2012, and in the drafting of the SDGs, BioVision campaigned for the inclusion of food systems in global issues such as climate change, poverty, and nutrition. We are proud that BioVision was a main contributor to the adopted language on SDG 2, Zero Hunger. The way we produce, consume, or waste food has huge social cost. Agriculture and food systems are the main drivers of some of the global challenges of our time: hunger, malnutrition, poor health, poverty, loss of soil fertility and biodiversity, water stress, and climate change. We need a sustainable food system with a future. Sufficient and healthy food for all, produced and consumed in an environmentally and socially responsible way. The gender hunger gap is real and getting worse. Women eat last and they eat least. The feminization of poverty continues to grow, and climate change creates economic and environmental shocks that increase this inequality. We need to see women not as helpless victims, but as key players in feeding and caring for the planet. Most small-scale farmers are women, and over 1/3 of the world's working women are employed in agri-food systems. Globally, the responsibility of providing nutritious food belongs to women, who are not only the caregivers of their families and communities, but also of plants, animals, soil, water, and biodiversity. It is vitally important that we leverage the strong potential of women as change makers. They must have access to resources and training, and their role in building resilience to climate change and increasing food security must be a top priority. Let's shine a spotlight on women as strong change makers for food security, good nutrition, and a healthy environment. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Paula. I mean, this is really a good encouragement. It's kind of warming us up for the call to action, I would say. So let us now say we see completely different perspectives. Here, the bioscience, of course, is directly in the subject of food and hunger, nutrition. But now we come to the mental health, which is also part of how we live and obtain peace and have to address inequality. So I would like to invite Anne Lindsay now to speak and present our organization. Anne, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here. And I have a message first. Sorry, I'm looking after the chat. Is our next speaker, Professor Manjeet Dosanjh, has she been able to link in to enter?
Yes, I'm connected.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Oh.
Okay, I'm Anne Lindsay, and I represent the World Federation for Mental Health at the UN in Geneva. I've actually been a member of the Committee on the Status of Women since about 2000. I couldn't quite remember this morning when I was thinking about this. I previously represented the International Association for Counselling, and I remember well the days of the CSW, Health and Human Rights Working Group, during the time of the great challenge of HIV at the beginning of the 2000s. Right, I mean, I'm a mental health professional, but that doesn't mean that I just focus and that my colleagues from World Federation for Mental Health just focus on mental health, because as we've heard before, mental health is cross-cutting and has very close links with the social determinants of health, such as poverty and hunger. I thought it would be quite nice to give you perhaps just two examples of work we have done in the last decade in Geneva, but also in the field, because we link through our national groups and through mental health professionals in various countries. We link and we do get quite a good idea of good feedback from the field and get feedback on what is needed. one of the areas we worked in for quite a long time, for about 6 years, was in the lead up to the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2011, we realized that mental health was not recognized as one of the priorities of non-communicable diseases. And we realized that in order to get it into the Sustainable Development Goals, we would need to have it recognized as an NCD priority area. We achieved that. It was just amazing. We were so pleased. And then we were able to get mental health and well-being into target 3 for the SDGs. No mean feat. The other much more up-to-date example I want to give you of our work here in Geneva and also in the field is the links we have now with the drive toward universal health coverage. You may know this is a priority topic of discussion at the UN General Assembly in global health meetings. And in case you don't know what universal health coverage is, ideally it is healthcare free for all at the point of access. Well, that's something of a dream, but that's technically what it should be and could be. And at the moment, we are helping with national action plans to develop universal health coverage to greater or lesser extents in different countries. I think that's very, very important. And we are hoping it will lead to the integration of mental health care provision in primary care settings. The very last thing I'd like to mention, because some of you might like to join us, the World Federation for Mental Health has set up what is called World Mental Health Day, which happens every October 10th, and it has happened every October since 1992. Our theme last year was mental health is a human right. That is our bottom line. That's what we believe in so strongly. And I hope many of you would look us up on the web and hope to see you on World Mental Health Day in October. Thanks for being here today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anne, for presenting also your strongest and passion for the mental health as a human right, and also to remind us how it is linked to poverty and food and hunger mainly, which is true. What we now see as a challenge in the West is, of course, that perhaps it's not related to poverty and food insecurity, but it's now related to other factors. So I think there is never an end to our works to get an integration of mental health and physical health, but we shall continue working with it. It will keep us active. So
Good.
I would now like to turn to Joanna Koch and Behane. Would you please like to present yourselves and your organization, UFER? Is Joanna there? Yes, Mrs. Koch. Welcome, Joanna. We don't hear you.
She needs to unmute.
Yeah.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you now?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I represent UFER, which is United for Equity and Ending Racism. It's an international movement for fraternal union among races and people, and defends human rights and enjoys official status with the UN. And it works on trafficking of women to the Middle East and other areas. And this should be stopped. In Ethiopia, there's beating, forced labor, sexual exploitation, and even more. Oh, what's this here? And early and forced marriages. And 46 million are still forced to work under modern day slavery, and 71% are women. They have harmful traditions and practices, including female genital mutilation and sexual rights. and early and forced marriage. And I have also worked with the Child's Right Connect, which was back in 1990, and that they created the rights of the child and worked closely with the Human Rights Commission. And I also represent solar cookers. And what do, solar cookers? Well, they save millions around the world by bringing down the solar heat into their stoves. And those who use their stove in Africa, those who use their stoves in the kitchen often die straight away. But if they use a solar cooker on outside their door, then they stay alive. And solar cookers works all around the world, saving millions, especially in Africa. So that's who I represent, solar cookers. Okay? Any questions?
Well, there will be a time for questions for all of you, but thank you very much for this presentation. I was just, the human trafficking is something that I've been very close. I could closely observe it in Laos, where young women and boys, but especially girls, would be taken from the villages or sort of lured into some kind of cheap job from where it was like an onward process. So what I would say is that the risk of falling prey to human trafficking is still much worse for women and girls than for boys and men. And it is very important that you fight against those violations, because they also deprive the women, of course, of their health, of their food, of their education, and they are proof again of the extreme unsafety of the environment for millions of women in the world. And so thank you for this presentation.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Yeah, I think we now have to go to, let me check. Mrs. Manjit, Manjit, are you there?
Yes, Letitia, thank you for giving me a moment to just say a few things, well, a few words actually. So my name is Manjit Dosanjh. Been working in the field of trying to have reduced inequalities, equal access through science, education, and technology and innovation. And I'm at Oxford and CERN, but my NGO is the International Cancer Expert Corps. And this deals with trying to improve access, especially in low, medium income countries where there's very limited access, but also in high income countries, in pockets of regional rural areas, especially poor women, widowed families where they are struggling to get this access to treatment. And you might be very surprised to hear, for example, that breast cancer, which is now in a pretty good shape, but 7 out of 10 women die in poor and LMIC regions, and 9 out of 10 of cervical cancer die from these challenges. And not only do they die and they suffer, but also the families and children mortality really goes up because there's no longer the carer. So one of the things we look at is how to improve access for women and people living in poverty. In terms of trying to build partnerships between North and South, it's really important that when we have all this access, we have all this knowledge, technology, that everybody has the same access. So, and of course, funding is always a problem. So we try to do a lot of advocacy through CSW, Geneva, but also with all the collaborators, raising the challenge, making sure what the issues are and how we could help. And then finally, in terms of talking about peace, the contributing really greatly increased well-being of women and girls who are really living on the national, poverty lines on the national health budgets. How do we make sure that population result in reduction in funding, reduction in resources, and then also reducing conflicts in all these devastating regions, because all these things are so closely linked. We cannot deal with just one issue. So what we try to do is reduce inequalities through education, health, and technologies, and building bridges between North and South. Thank you so much, Letitia, for giving us just a little moment to say what we've been trying to do. And having been born in a very small village where there was nothing, to know that it's possible to build those bridges. I would like to really see that we should, as long as we collaborate and work together, we can make a huge difference. So thanks, Letitia.
Thank you, Manjit, for this presentation. It's always interesting. You always hear something new, like even at that STEM panel that you organized last year. There was a lot, it was very rich. The partnerships, of course, are very important, and the partnerships around health, and also that we make sure that women who bear such an excessive burden of everything still not fair access to development, still an extraordinary contribution to food, to making the household and the family and the community run, but the benefits do not come to them. And we will have to work on that and continue working on it. Thank you very much, Manjit. I would now like to ask Carol. Carol McConkie, could you present yourself? Oh, Carol, you're still muted.
Okay, let's start over. I'm Carol McConkie. I'm a representative of Latter-day Saint Charities, which is the humanitarian organization of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And of course, like everyone has stated, we believe that everyone everywhere has the right to access to nutritious food, clean water, quality education, and healthcare. Our local administrative areas across the world design and manage initiatives to address some solutions to these issues. And we also carry out global initiatives, especially at times like during the pandemic. During 2022, for instance, we completed projects in 157 countries worldwide and addressing issues like chronic diseases, barriers to education, and needs of displaced people, and child nutrition. Partnerships are key to our efforts. And thankfully, gratefully, we have some access to funding, and our historic $32 million grant to the World Food Program USA enabled them to assist millions of families, providing them with stability and hope for a better future. These initiatives were involved in our design to build sustainable solutions that promote self-reliance for women specifically and dignity for all. They include building awareness, collaboration with health workers, establishing farming cooperatives in communities, and access to cooking classes, learning about and nutrient-rich foods, becoming aware and expert in malnutrition screening, and access to clinical services like vaccinations and dewormings. In this effort, we try to invite everyone everywhere to do something to address poverty. Volunteers from the very micro level to the macro level. And in that, identify the greatest needs. We ask them to identify these needs within their scope of influence and learn about their local organizations and projects and get involved. Listen and learn from those most affected by the issues. Question assumptions and set aside prejudices and prioritize the relationships over differences of opinions. Involve individuals and communities, women and men, working together and planning interdependently is key. Respect the preferences and beliefs and customs of those that we serve, and share our experiences to inspire others into action. We feel that together, with everyone working together, we can and will prevail over poverty.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carol. Would you allow me to ask a question. You have a massive impact. I mean, 32 million, that's enormous. The number of projects you talk about and programs, it's just mind-boggling. So I dare to ask you, do you have developed methodologies to overcome the gender bias? Because you must meet it. You say so nicely that women and men should work together. But in my own organization in the digital field, it's not easy. They like to do it for the women. The men do not like to have the women as engineers next to them. So could you tell us something about that?
I think from the very top level, from
yes,
for instance, the director of Latter-day Saint Charities is a woman, and
yes.
We have a very good balance at the very, like I say, the very macro level. And so when we bring that that interdependence into the areas where we work and invite men and women to work together, oftentimes we encourage married couples to join together in these efforts, and single women to be elevated in her role and have access, especially to education. And we've talked about today, that access to education is key to really helping women be able to step up and take a place in having a voice in making policies, having access to understand the education and the training that she needs to really be able to function at a higher level. That upskilling is critically important.
Okay. Thank you so much for adding this little note for our special forum here. Could I now ask Berthe to make her statement and present herself? Thank you so much, Paula. Carol.
Thanks very much, Letitia. My name is, and I'm a member of Sir Optimist International. And we want, of course, to thank all the speakers for their interesting points of view and opening our eyes. Sir Optimist International work globally to educate, enable, and empower women and girls in different areas. And we are active in 122 countries, and we work in partnership with others who are like-minded as we are. So in the pursuit of a more harmless world, we think it is imperative to address the issues of poverty and food insecurity, which create vicious circles that affects women in larger proportions. As pillars of the communities, women are often the burden of, bear often the burden of economic hardship and hunger, making it crucial to adopt a gender-responsive approach. Achieving true equality and fostering lasting peace requires a holistic approach that not only acknowledges the interconnectedness of these problems, but also prioritizes the empowerment and well-being of women. Empowering women economically is a key component for breaking the circle of poverty. This involves providing equal access to education and jobs, ensuring fair wages, and dismantling discriminatory practices. Breaking the circle of food insecurity necessitates not only addressing immediate hunger, but also implementing long-term solutions that change agricultural practices, improve infrastructures, and promote food systems. Education is a powerful tool for breaking the circle of poverty. By promoting education, especially for girls, societies can challenge traditional norms and empower women to pursue various career paths. Educated women are better equipped to navigate economic challenges, make informed decisions, and actively participate in building peaceful societies. The Sir Optimists believe that investing in women and girls' education brings high rewards, breaking the circles of poverty and aiding economic growth. And the result of our project prove that this is a successful approach. Governments and international organizations must prioritize policy reforms that address the root causes of poverty and food insecurity. This includes implementing gender-sensitive policies, investing in social safety nets, and promoting inclusive economic growth. By investing in women's economy empowerment, societies can create a ripple effect that extends to families and communities. In conclusion, achieving equality and peace requires a comprehensive and a gender-inclusive approach to addressing poverty and food insecurity. By recognizing the unique challenge faced by women, societies can break the circle of poverty and build a more equitable and sustainable future. Nourishing equality and peace begins with acknowledging the interconnectedness of these issues and committing to a transformative action that uplifts women and, consequently, entire communities. The Artemis International reaffirmed that it is a collective responsibility to ensure that no one, especially women and girls, is left behind in the pursuit of a harmonious and just society. Thank you.
Thank you, Berthe. I think this was a wonderful way of ending our panel with the 4th contributions, which were so varied. We had the keynote speakers who told us from their perspectives also at the global level, but here listening to the different statements of our own members, we also see the civil society in action at the local level, the regional level, and the higher level. I feel entitled to stress this because the linkages between the different levels is so important to make sure that we never become like an object of policy making higher up, that we always keep the connection with what does this do on the ground? What is the effect on real women, not abstractions, but real women and girls and the society behind. I think that we have come to the point that we should open the floor, and I invite the audience to raise their hands. They can raise their hands, I think, through this special feature on the screen. And I ask that you be short, that if possible, you refer to the speaker that you would like your question or comment to, and if it's a comment, that it would be one that can help or incite the speaker to add something to it or to have a comment on it. Thank you. The floor is open.
Letitia, if I could just add, if those asking questions could just do them very succinctly, because we only really
yes.
minutes for
yes.
answers.
Yeah, good. So Julie Kabuka has a question.
Yes, my name is Julie Kabukani, and I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, but I travel frequently to Africa, especially in the DRC, where I have a women and girl NGO, we speak French in the Congo. So NGO, which is based on health and education for women. So my question is for, I can't remember her name, I'm so sorry. Let me look at my messages here. The one that talked about poverty and, we all are talking about poverty and access to nutritious food for women. So there is a lot of issue in the Congo, especially for women and girls that are subjected to violence. So they are really disempowered and they live in extreme poverty. So my question was, do you have anything on the ground, which will mean working with local organization? Because most of the time when there is help, like from the US aid, the people who take advantage of it are the people in power, and it never goes down to the population that needs help. especially women and girls. So I just wanted to know, do you have any structure that allow you to work with local NGOs, especially women-led NGOs, so that those women can get the help they so severely need in terms of nutrition, and I can also add education and health. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Do I interpret correctly that the question was mainly to Mrs. Isabelle Durand, or am I mistaken about that? I mean, you have listened like I did.
Or World Food Program, but I'm not sure if
the World Food Program, yes.
Sorry, that was the first intervener.
Yeah.
World Food. So it was Mrs. Kavita Brambat, huh?
Exactly, Mrs. Kavita.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Mrs. Kavita, are you still there to answer this question?
I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm very happy to answer that question. I'm not sure if you can see me. I definitely can't see myself.
Yes.
So I hope I'm not sitting in the dark.
We see you.
Yeah. Julie, merci pour votre question. C'était, oui, bien noté. And I'm happy to answer it actually, because Julie, what you're saying is actually one of these things that we are really committed to at the moment. You're absolutely right when you say that women in the countries that we work in are often not even deprived of their voice, but just don't have access to mechanisms to express themselves in the way that other people can. And I think, you know, it's becoming clearer to many organizations, and particularly the World Food Programme, that this is something that is absolutely fundamental to our programs. Now, the issues that we face, both at WFP and the other UN agencies, is what does local organizations mean, right? So I think there's been a lot of lack of clarity when it comes to localization or local action and engaging civil society organizations, because what you see is the bigger civil society branches of international organizations are used as the mouthpiece for local action, which is something I am personally really against, and it's something that doesn't serve the purpose of contextualized local action, right? So it's speaking to your point, Julie. What do we do to do this, to make sure we're leveraging those voices? So number one, we make sure that when we target people who are being excluded from food distributions, we use community-based targeting methods, where we speak to local organizations, representative groups, and even community leaders, men and women, and we make sure that we have a good divide to be able to get what the particular barriers to exclusion are, and to understand who is being most excluded from this assistance we're giving. So those are things that we do. But the other thing that we really are trying to do is to engage local actors as cooperating partners. That means people who will implement our programs. But the UN has big systemic barriers within it. And one of those systemic barriers is that the contracting mechanisms we use, the due diligence and the risk requirements we make people go through are really, really high. And it really prevents the smaller organizations from making the most of these opportunities to collaborate with us. And we need that collaboration. So at the moment, this WFP is really looking at the types of contracting mechanisms that we offer. We're trying to be innovative, like using community cash grants to be able to get people on board. We're trying to lower the risk and due diligence requirements, because they're really unfair. Like, who is going to have a constitution that's written by a lawyer when you're based in a place that doesn't even have internet connection, you know? So it's really getting out of this kind of almost colonial kind of white saviorism attitude and getting down to the ground and really understanding what the needs of those local organizations is and how they want to work with us. So this is really something that we are committed to within the Gender Protection Inclusion Service, but it's something that we really are committed to in terms of getting our work to work better for others, right? So we do work in Congo, in DRC, in RDC. We work and we have a very strong gender focus in RDC, as well as a disability inclusion focus there. So I would say, you know, these are one of the promising countries of where we could be doing this. But I have to say that it is a big point of concern and a big point of action in terms of like how we implement gender equitable responses at WFP. I hope that answered your question. It may not have satisfied you, but it's the best answer I can give.
Okay, thank you. Of course, it doesn't totally satisfy me, but I'm gonna try and go to your website and see what are the organizations that you are working with locally, you know, and then we'll go from there. But it really doesn't trickle down to the local population. That I can assure you. Thank you.
No. Thank you so much for this discussion. I'm also fully into it. Gives me sleepless night to try to solve it. I will not interfere now because we have a little time only, but Julie, please do get back to me. I'm in exactly the same position. And also, if the three of us can come to a solution with simplifying these requirements, we lost a partnership because we couldn't produce a council of administration. We couldn't produce, well, I mean, things that, of course, are not available in Bukavu in a small, that was ridiculous, but it stopped us completely. I saw a few other raised hands, so we cannot make our private conversation about this. Here we have Sheila Raumistri. Would you like to speak up?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for organizing this. I'm Shaila Raumistri. I'm in California. I'm representing Graduate Women's International STEM Institute. I am an entrepreneur in aerospace and medical devices and very, very passionate leader in advancing women's causes. And it seems that despite being part of the CSW and the women's space for almost 25 years, we have not moved the needle to our satisfaction. So my question, or anyone's satisfaction. So my question is to the speaker that just touched on men and women working together, particularly in technology fields and so on. So the question is, how do we increase that participation at that high leadership level? How do we build the pipelines for women to participate? And also, how do we impact currently? Technology, artificial intelligence is such an emerging force that's dominating all aspects of our lives. Particularly in view of that, how do we do this? And investing in women, whether it's the micro women entrepreneur or whether it's investing in women's education or investing in leadership, all critical issues. So can we have a response on that, a spotlight on that, please? Thank you.
Yes. Who would like to provide that spotlight? Because this is a very complicated question. The same gender bias that women struggle with at the lowest level is also perpetuated at all levels, and it does impact also even in the local organizations. When you work with, for instance, we work with bringing digital literacy with an application that would improve the women's health, but there still are men put themselves as gatekeepers, so that when there was question that we would put a question in that would help them to report on violence, sexual violence and gender-based violence during pregnancy, we have to really think about it. How do we include it without the husband or the partner, when he discovers, say, you are not allowed to use that app because it is against me, you see? So this is so pervasive. If anybody has an answer to that, any of the speakers of the panel, of the keynote speakers, I would really invite a comment that could help us further. It's a heavy one. It's a heavy
I'm not
weight.
sure if the question was directed towards me when I talked briefly about how women are, in France particularly, are taking matters into their own hands to train themselves on services that were often seen as men's work, such as driving a tractor, utilizing difficult mechanical equipment. What I've also found interesting is that in this situation, women have also turned to actually not wanting to utilize this type of technology because they prefer to utilize more traditional methods, smaller farms that don't need these huge technological equipment. But this is necessary if we want to have a production at a sufficient level. We can't just use our hands, unfortunately. So what do we need? Well, we need education, that's for sure. And how do we bring women to the levels where they can make a difference? Well, you talked about AI, these types of technology I'm not so familiar with. But yes, it's important that women are actually in the creation process, because if not, the biases will keep on replicating themselves. There was an interesting fact that, for example, in the police in the UK, they tried to put in a system, an AI system to sort of pinpoint where criminals would be, that actually to avoid, let's say, personal bias, but actually in the mathematics within the program was included bias towards different origins, etc. So I don't think there is an answer to your question, but for me, it's targeting girls at the smallest age to tell them about technology, science, difficult terrains that were often seen only as fields for men, such as engineering, science engineering, software engineering, to get them interested and make it available to women at the youngest age.
Letitia, I may have to interrupt here. I don't think we have time for all these questions, but I think the Ambassador Mendez, I assume her hand is up, probably not to ask a question, maybe, but to answer a question. Huh?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I was listening so intensely. Thank you, Solange. I think that was a good reply. Yes, Mrs. Mendez, Ms. Escobar, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you so much, Caroline and Letitia, and thank you so much for the question. I only would like to stress the importance that when we always talked about gender equality, always it's about social transformation. No matter what kind of a specific topic. The question of our colleagues is about the participation of women in the technologies, but it could be about this important topic that we are talking about right now, nourishing equality and peace. But the first thing is that, yes, of course, we have to create and to visibilize the condition of the women and girls. And the first step always is to build a database, because otherwise we cannot change the things that we want to change if we don't have a picture of the reality through the database. And in the meantime, we have to do so many actions and measures and contribution. But the most important thing, in my opinion, it's about the culture. It's about the social transformation. And of course, it's not about the women participation. It's about to build new societies with new roles for men and for women, girls and boys. And this is generally speaking, but I don't pretend to answer the question, but it's a common framework that it helps in any condition and in any action of equality gender. So, well, this is my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Manda. That was very important to remind us that it's all about social transformation. And I like the tone of our discussion up to now. It was always very respectful. It was not social engineering where we push it, but social transformation where we help people find their own way. That's very important to make it sustainable and to contribute to peace at the same time. I don't know if we still have time for questions or we have to go to the call to action. What do you say, Carolyn? Can I still take 2 questions or?
Well, I would say one hand was up for quite a while. I see Lois Herman. And also I thought maybe just a sentence or two from our other speaker, perhaps Uni
yes.
or Ms. Isabel,
yes.
would like to just say a word or two in closing. Huh? Yeah.
Yes.
But maybe Lois, just quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Would like to ask our World Food Program speaker to say a few words about Gaza. You may not have time now, but the food and starvation and famine issues there are so serious. I carry FAO credentials and really respect the work that you spoke about at the World Food Program. I'll stop there so you can add the other people.
So,
Sorry,
Mrs. Bram?
Was that directed to me?
Yeah, it was directed to
could
you,
just
and it was
repeat my
about
question, please.
It was about the food situation in Gaza and what World Food Program can do there, how they view it, what is a solution, yeah, if there is one.
Yeah, the solution, and I think everyone will agree, the solution is to have a humanitarian ceasefire and to ensure the unimpeded and safe access of humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza. And I think that's been a clear message sent by WFP, both publicly and on our website. Our Deputy Executive Director, Carl Scow, has been very, very, very insistent in advocacy for that. And unfortunately, we've had to stop our food distributions in northern Gaza due to the fact that food assistance in the area has been unsafe and cannot be, the safety of humanitarian access cannot be guaranteed. So it's a horrific situation that we're in, but the situation is even more horrific for those people stuck and starving in Gaza, where we now know that the majority of the population is experiencing severe, catastrophic levels of food insecurity. So it's something that we recognize, it's something that we're advocating for day and night, and that our country teams are prepared to respond to as and when we have the ability to be able to deliver food to Gaza in the levels and quantities that we can ensure will have an impact on the population. Just to let you know that prior to the war, we were sending in 100 trucks a day to Gaza, and now that will at least need to be quadrupled. So we are both in this sense of urgency, preparing to deliver food, but what we also want to say is that we are dealing with enormous funding cuts as well as every other UN agency at a time when the food needs of people in Gaza and many other countries, let's say Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, Ethiopia, Congo, are escalating. So it's a very tough position to be in. And this is why I'm very, very happy that the focus of CSW is on investment, right? It's investment in women to find future solutions. So, and just to let you know that our work there is being looked at, and it always has been looked at with a gender lens. And we are looking at how we liaise with organizations on the ground, women-led organizations, but also I've been personally involved in advocating with the disability community within Gaza that we have gender-sensitive and disability inclusive responses to food insecurity once, as and when we have safe access to Gaza. But our work continues in the West Bank along the same lines as what I just mentioned, and where we also see increased levels of violence and food insecurity post the beginning of this war. So I'm afraid we're all obviously in solidarity with the people who are suffering from this war. But as and when we have access, we will be working alongside others to make sure that we can do the best we can.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Brambach. I think we would now have to, there's not, could I take one more question and we ask Dr. Karakuna to speak? Or would you?
I think maybe one question not, but I think if one of our main speakers who hasn't spoken after their main presentation, if they would like to say something, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I was thinking of Dr. Karunakara. Would you like to say something?
Thank you. I think what Kavita said about, can you hear me? Yes. What Kavita said about Gaza sort of underlines the importance of political solutions. I think, we have to realize that poverty is not a technical fix. It has to be a political fix. And I think it requires us to look at the way we do business, the way we do trade, and so many other things that that is part of our life in this day and age. Having worked on the ground, the more I've worked on the ground in close to 50, 60 countries around the world, the decisions that are made in Washington and Brussels and New York have huge implications on the lives of people on the ground. So while we look for localization and local solutions and working in partnership, all of that very, very important, we should also, I think, especially people who are going to see CSW 68 to New York, etc., should push for global leadership and now global governance to do their part in ensuring that they find the war ends and certain peace prevails in these countries, so that development can happen, so that lands can be cultivated, so that children and others can be fed nutritious meals. So we tend to focus almost always on the local aspect of it, but the global decision making, political will, etc., at that level is absolutely important. Just one statistic is the US, for example, gives close to $500 million a year to UNRWA, which is the UN agency that works to provide assistance. At the same time, it provides $4 billion in aid to Israel. That shows the imbalance between what goes to how UN agencies are struggling to meet the unbelievable demands that have been placed on UN agencies and other humanitarian organizations to provide assistance in the times we live in today. So that's my message, that we have to keep in mind that the solutions have to be political for us to be able to do the work on the ground. And I hope the committee can play a role in pushing the leadership in New York to do what is right and what is just. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karakuna. That is really very important way of closing our panel and our discussion. And I would...
Sorry, Letitia.
Yes.
Keep interrupting
yes.
you. Maybe Miss Isabel Durant would like to say a word too.
Oh, Miss Isabel.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to add two things that all what I heard from various speakers. First, I agree with the previous speaker, the solution or the trend is also a political trend, and it means for social organization, NGOs on a very local level, it's important to have a link with the local and national authorities. I think that I heard what was said by the person of DRC, the difficulty for small organizations to have access to the fund. I think that to do that, it's important to have a link also with national authorities. Secondly, make alliances and agile alliances between different NGOs in order to have access to the money, to the fund, and to develop greater progress, bigger projects. It could help to have access to the fund, which is important, even if we know that the bureaucratic and diligence, etc., and requirements have to be decreased and simplified. But in addition, if CSO organization can have alliances, it helps. And finally, about education. I think that, of course, education of women in all fields and also STEM, etc. But we have not to forget that we have also to educate boys regarding respect, regarding gender equality, regarding the way that they can have access, but also women can have access, and I think that we have not to forget to educate boys to gender equality and not only support women. Of course, we have to do both. So that was a three message: local, national, and global have to be linked, and it requires from NGO on local level to keep an eye on all those levels. I know that it's time consuming, that it's sometimes very difficult for small NGOs, but I think that work just on very, very local level is probably insufficient to address global solution. Thank you. And
merci, Madame Isabelle. Merci, Madame Isabelle. Pouvons-nous avoir votre email?
Oui, je vais le mettre dans le chat. So, je
merci
vous donne mon adresse email.
OK, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. It was really an excellent panel, excellent discussion. I feel very sorry for those who have raised their hand. Perhaps they did find already some of the answers in what the keynote speakers and the panel speakers contributed as a closing remark. So I think that I would now leave the floor to, or give the talking to, what's her name? No, it's not Karen. Carol. Carol was going to read our call to action, but perhaps Carolyn, you first want to say a word, please?
I was going to introduce Carol, actually the person who call to action. And thank you so much for those that actually referred to that call to action among the speakers. That was really good. We hope it has the same success in the field as well, because it will be launched now on our website and is meant to be used. But our vice president of our NGO Committee on the Status of Women, Carol McConkie, who you heard give her a little message about the work of her NGO, she will maybe introduce this call to action very briefly and read a few points of it. So Carol, you have the floor.
Yes, in light of time, I think it's important to just pull from this call to action that our concluding comment in preparing this call to, or objective in preparing this call to action is that all stakeholders do their part individually, collectively, locally, nationally, regionally, and globally, governmentally, to ensure the way poverty is addressed, that it benefits women and girls. And of course, I love the education of men, because we have always felt that we work better when we have men on our side and who understand and are willing to work with us together. So those, and then the point of partnerships is so critical. And that point that as civil society stakeholders, we do work in all these spaces in partnership with each other and with UN entities and member states to fulfill this mandate and address these issues. And then sharing, as we work together, sharing good practices, our expertise and information on the ground and at every level is critically important. And then because the point that was made about this being the importance of the political side, we call upon member states to increase the number of women in leadership and management roles at all levels. We need to increase that voice, to have those who are being affected the most need to have a voice in solving the problem. And then we call on member states to fulfill their human rights obligations and commitments through this collaboration, and with a trust that civil society is interested in the well-being of all, and then to protect the rights of those who are most vulnerable to poverty and hunger, including those who have no access to education, adequate nutrition, well-being, as has been stated throughout this so well by our speakers today and throughout this event. So I think, thank you to all. It's been wonderful. And as has been said, this call to action will be posted on the website and made available for all. Please use it as needed to make interventions and so forth, and to motivate others and inspire others to participate with us on behalf of women and girls in overcoming poverty. Thank you all.
Thank you, Carol. Martin, would it be possible to just put the call on the screen quickly so it could at least be recognized? And but then, of course, everyone can go to our website and download it. Yeah. Okay. Just maybe you could just scroll through it. We won't read it, but we just quickly scroll through it with the preamble. Call to action, calling upon ourselves first, not just the governments and the institutions, and then we call upon member states at the end. So please take time to look at that and use it and give us your feedback, about it, because in fact, there will be a few points added now from the meeting today, different points that came up through the speakers or the questions, and then we will post the final version on our website. Okay, I think, yeah. So maybe then I will just, on behalf of our committee, I don't know, we were thinking of putting a few others on the screen if it's possible to do that. I don't know if it's too complicated, but just on behalf of our committee and all those who have really worked hard over several months to prepare this event, we wanted to, now this is still more than a week, 10 days before the opening of the Commission on the Status of Women. We hope that this day, this information sharing could, encourage you to be more active. You don't have to be there in person. There's much you can do virtually. But then again, most importantly, and I think many on the screen are seasoned CSW goers and, activists, but for those maybe some newer civil society representatives, just to encourage you to please don't be an observer, just an observer. Really take the opportunity to follow your intuition, bring in your good practices and your good ideas, be it in New York or even wherever you are working, whatever you are doing. And we in Geneva, our NGO Committee on the Status of Women, which we like to call ourselves Women's Rights Advocates in International Geneva, the heart of human rights and service to humanity. So we are looking for partners and collaborators on all levels. And maybe we found a few today. We're happy to see. We're working on certain things like for the Beijing Plus 30. We have working groups on all the 12 critical areas, including poverty. So if anyone on the screen is interested to contribute to this, please, again, go to our website. You can get information, how you can join a working group. And I'm sure there's something for everyone. We need a broader expanse of information and collaboration, as we heard from many, many speakers today. So having said all of that, thank you. I just wanted to mention the couple names of those who are hardworking, but who were not on the screen, because many of us have been. But there is behind the scenes Martin and Anna Bonnie, who are our tech team. Also Sandra, our young intern, who is helping also. And Lindsay, Karen Bybee and Karen Thompson as well, who contributed to our call to action and various other things. We have a bi-monthly publication, all these things you can find on our website. So please, let's not just make this an event, but let's make this the beginning of a good, healthy collaboration. So thank you all. And if you want to stay on the screen, we're going to take some screenshots, actually. If I could ask maybe Martin or someone to do that of everyone, and maybe you can. Oh, actually, no, we have. I'm so sorry. Actually, Stacy is actually closing our meeting because I'm so sorry, Stacy. Stacy is closing our meeting with something very, very important, and that is our orientation ideas for how to make your CSW68 a better and more productive experience. So Stacy, sorry for that. We got a little bit behind time and I forgot that. Very important part. So Stacy, please.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. I thought that we were just going to skip this part and go ahead and close out, but let me put myself back into it. And I actually have made this even more brief than it was. I don't need to share any slides. I had planned to, but what I'll just do is is give some brief words and then talk about what are in the slides in terms of information. And then we will share the PowerPoint with everybody. So just to kind of back up and say hello again, everybody. I am Stacey Dry-Lara, Executive Director of Graduate Women International, and I am the immediate past president of the NGO Committee on the Status of Women Geneva. It has been super nice today to see so many smiling faces and interesting faces, and lots of familiar and new faces too. So the information that I'm going to present to you might be very helpful and encouraging. But you know, also for today, this is the committee's consultation day, and we have heard some extremely impactful and inspiring presentations. We've got a lot of thoughts going forward to the CSW that starts in a few weeks. Some of you are seasoned participants in the CSW and others not so much. And so my part of today's event is to share with you some of the CSW practical information. But first, you know, why is it so important for us to be involved, whether in person or virtually, in CSW68 with this overarching theme we've heard about today of ending poverty? You know, as we've heard, women in poverty are intrinsically linked. There is no doubt. It is said often globally that women are disproportionately affected by poverty, facing barriers such as limited access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities that we've heard about today. But by actively engaging in the CSW68 discussions around poverty alleviation, we can bring to the surface once again the unique challenges faced by women that cannot be overlooked, but rather addressed head on by you all as international advocates for women and girls and this priority theme that we've been talking about of poverty. And secondly, our participation in CSW68 is an act of solidarity with women around the world who are living in poverty. By lending them our voices, we stand in solidarity with those who are struggling, amplifying their voices and advocating for solutions that will help them and that address their needs as we strive together. And we can use CSW68 as a vehicle, striving together to break them free of the cycle of poverty. And our presence at the Commission ensures that gender equality remains central to the discussion on poverty education. We know that empowering women economically is not just a matter of fairness, it's also smart economics for every member state, no matter their GDP. In fact, when women rise above poverty, states' GDP benefits, everyone benefits. So, as you just heard, lastly, we have this participation. Our participation is a call to action. It's a declaration that we refuse to accept a world where women continue to bear the brunt of poverty. By engaging in the CSW68, we commit ourselves to driving meaningful change, advocating for policies and programs that will uplift the women that we are speaking for in the CSW68 and create pathways to economic empowerment. So, in this PowerPoint that I was going to show you, there's information such as what is the difference between the CSW, the UN government side, and the forum side? There's a big difference. The forum is a civil society side that offers us hundreds of parallel events and networking opportunities. And in New York, the Artisan Fair, we have the conversation circles that are virtual, and I think maybe in person again this year. And also in the PowerPoint that will be shared with you are resources such as websites that you can go to for the forum and for UN Women, where you can actually download and read for your advocacy work all of the statements from our members of this committee and then some. Look through them and you'll find some very interesting information that you can use in your particular and unique advocacy setting. Also, in the PowerPoint, I was going to remind you to take notes at the sessions, take pictures and screenshots so that you have a legacy of your participation, and perhaps put together a little report for your NGO, for anyone. Just share it so that there's something that comes from your participation. And lastly, in the PowerPoint, I just wanted to say something that might sound a bit naive and foolish, but those of you who are going to be in New York, please be aware of your security. Be aware of your surroundings. Use well-lit bus and busy stops. Trust your instincts when you're walking down the street. Travel in groups when you can. There'll be a lot of us there, so we travel in groups. And plan your route. And in terms of security, don't forget, for all of you who are going to go to the CSW68 forum and register today, it's free. For all of you that are going to register and participate in the forum, and it's hundreds of parallel events, don't forget to be mindful of safe cybersecurity practices. There are bullies out there that want to stop what we're doing. So thank you so much for giving me the floor. And whether you're in New York or you're joining us virtually, your participation in the CSW68 is a powerful step towards ending poverty. Let's not forget that it's a powerful step to alleviating poverty and advancing gender equality and being together in the spirit of CSW in friendship. That's what we're doing also, is in friendship and networking with each other. Let's come together, lend our voices to this important conversation, and work towards a future where all women and girls have an opportunity to thrive. That is my abbreviated presentation for you today. The PowerPoint will be shared, and thank you so much for giving me the floor, and I wish you all a wonderful experience at CSW68.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. That was so important. Thank you. Maybe shall we make a few screenshots? I think we have two screens to do. So Martin, you will be doing that. I think we can take, okay, on 3, 1, 2. It'd be nice if people want to turn on their camera. I see many don't have their cameras on. If you want, we wait just a moment. Yeah, much better, much better. Okay, on 3, then, so for screen 1.
Parfait. Done it. It's done. Caroline.
Okay. And then 2 on 3, 1, 2, 3. And thank you to everyone who has contributed to this. See you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. See you in New York.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you in New York.
Thank you so much.
Bye. See you in New
Bye.
York.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Sigamos adelante. Siempre adelante. Siempre adelante. Sin volver atrás. Sin volver atrás. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. amaremos con pasión, siempre con pasión, siempre con pasión, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna reach across our border, reach across our border, reach across our border, never turning back, never turning back. Vivamos sin fronteras, siempre sin fronteras, siempre sin fronteras, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna reunite the family, reunite the family, reunite the family, never turning back, never turning back. Familias reunidas, siempre reunidas, siempre reunidas, sin volver atrás, sin volver atrás. Gonna keep on moving forward, keep on moving forward, keep on moving forward, never turning back, 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 never turning back.
Peace.
We love you.